Welcome to AOL. Welcome to AOL Underground.
Would you please state your handle and the years you were active on AOL?
My handle was Soloist, and I was active from around 1995 to 2000, but I still have an account today.
Nice. And when did you first get a computer?
First got a computer in second grade. First got a real computer in 8th grade.
Nice. And then when did you first get online?
Got online in 1994 when a friend introduced me to bulletin board systems. So I obviously caught like the tail end of that world. But I was already really into computers, and that kind of just blew me away.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about the bulletin boards?
Yeah, so a friend somehow was introduced to bulletin board systems through someone, and he told me about them and was showing me them at his place. And the ones we were using were these, it was called CNET BBS, which is like the software that I really ended up loving. But it was, strictly text-based. It was run on Amigas. And there were probably 5 in the Chicago area that I knew of that I started frequenting. You remember those days, just the excitement of like the modem noise, connecting, and then even more so on bulletin board systems because they were smaller. So it was like, okay, who's going to be online? Maybe it's like 3 or 5 people. Sometimes there was one in Chicago called Omega that had 10 phone lines, and there'd be time at night where it was just constantly busy. So it was that excitement of like dialing, trying to connect, it failing. It could take like an hour to even connect. So I really, really loved those days. And it's sad that the internet kind of destroyed bulletin board systems, but it's a real reality. That's just what happened.
Nice. So what'd you do on the bulletin board systems?
Some games, some file trading, chatting. It really wasn't anything that amazing, especially by today's standards. But I think it was really exciting feeling that connection, even, when it was just local. It wasn't like worldwide or something. Wasn't anything crazy, but it was fun at the time.
Okay. And then how'd you end up on AOL?
Again, a friend introduced me to AOL. What I realize now is AOL, it was more of a bulletin board system than the internet. It was, and that's where its origins came from. It didn't even have the web at first. So it felt like a gigantic bulletin board system, and I loved it. And it had, of course, the graphical user interface, which some BBSs did too, but it was, it felt modern. It felt massive, all the chat rooms, all the different things you could do. It was taking that connection from the bulletin board systems and just putting it on, steroids, more and more steroids. So it again kind of like brought that, it was like a whole new level of excitement. Like, wow, this is the world. Even though, yes, it was very America focused.
I guess I never thought about it that way. Because really, you'd have to call in, and it was kind of like a giant BBS. Yeah, that makes sense. What version of AOL did you start on? Do you remember?
I want to say 2.0. I remember 2.0, 2.5 discs. It was around that time. Yeah, you might know better than me. Do you know what year that would have been? Or
yeah, I think I got on in 95, and it was like 2.5.
Okay.
I think it was right around there. So then how'd you find the scene, or tell me what happened once you got an AOL?
At first, I think like a lot of people, was just going in the chat rooms, kind of amazed that there's all these people in there talking about whatever. And then it must have been that same friend, I can't even remember, who introduced me to the Where's chat rooms. And I ended up just spending a lot of time in there. Of course, today I believe in paying for software. But at the time when you're like 14 years old and I remember I wanted to get Corel Draw just so I could start messing with like graphic design. So being able to get that software and just start using it and experimenting with it. I mean, having it at that time definitely had an impact on me even today. Like just being able to learn that stuff very early and use these programs that I certainly couldn't afford at the time. So yeah, I ended up just hanging out in the Wares chat rooms a lot.
Nice. So, were there anything else memorable in the Warehouse chat rooms?
Well, of course, the AOL progs. I mean, I remember the first one I got access to, which I think maybe that's true for many of us, if not all of us, but was AOL. It's funny. I mean, AOL progs, they were just kind of like supplementing AOL for us, but it added a whole new layer to the experience. The people, I don't even remember what it was called, but where they were saying, type this or that into the chat box and to get on this list where you're going to be receiving the software, all of that kind of stuff. Like, it's all distant memories at this point, but it was really about excitement, connection. I mean, for a few years there, that was my life. I do remember AOL starting to crack down on the Wares chat rooms and stuff like that, and that was kind of a sad period where that went away, at least in some form.
Nice. And then were there any other programs you used, or did you make any programs?
Well, so I did make programs. Actually, I took a basic programming class in high school. I actually asked the teacher, and I was not a good student. I didn't really care about school at the time. That's one of the things I wish I could go back. But the one thing I did care about was computers, and I had bought like Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing to learn how to type better. I knew this was going to be my life. So even as like a, I don't know, 13, 14-year-old kid, I really put a lot of focus into typing. So typically in high school, you would have to take the typing course and then you could be eligible to take the programming course. But my ambitious self asked the teacher if I could skip the typing course and go right into basic. And she amazingly let me. And I loved messing around with basic. And then once I realized that basic worked in Visual Basic and you could code for Windows, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I started toying with that quite a bit and did learn a lot about coding just from the sort of Wares scene, prog scene. People were releasing like different libraries that they created and stuff like that. So just being able to look at how someone was doing something and apply it to your own software was really educational, actually. And I actually created some progs for the BBS world that I was playing with, just using send keys in Visual Basic, just creating some tools for that world as well. I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, that was kind of my coding aspect of the coding aspect of what I did. Later in like it was 1998 or 1998 or 1999. The high school day had ended, and some guy came up to me with another friend of mine, and we were just talking, and he's like, "Have you ever heard of spam?" I was like, "Yeah, kind of. Well, yes." And he's like, told me about this program called Spazam that he was using to make some money online, and I was intrigued. And like right around this time, there were a couple other things that happened. I was consulting for a firm in Chicago called TechnoTribe, and one of their clients was DeVry, the school. Amazingly, again, the guy running TechnoTribe hired me to do IT consulting at DeVry specifically, which at the time was based in that Oakbrook Terrace Tower. You're probably familiar with that building. So it was pretty cool going there as like a 16-year-old. And I didn't know what I was doing a lot of the time, but I had this great book. I wish I knew what it was. It would show you visually how to, in like sketches, how to like replace hard drives, replace RAM, do all these different like technical things. So I would have this book on the floor, and I'm working on these computers at their corporate office. It was really fun. But they ended up giving me, I had asked them, they were like getting rid of some computers, and I had asked them if I could have one of them. And I think it was probably like a 486 or something. It was old. They had no use for it, and I really didn't either. But I just took that home. And then also a study hall teacher or study hall monitor at school. I don't even remember how this came about, but I said I was really trying to get like a US robotics external modem. And he was so nice. He was like, you know what? I actually have an extra one. And he, you know, we went out to his car, not that day, but a few days later, and he gave me this US robotics. I don't remember. It was probably like a 33.6 modem. So I now had this like new computer setup, which again is a 486, so it wasn't that capable or anything. And I had this modem, and now this guy is talking to me about this program called Spazam. He taught me how to set it up, showed me this affiliate program. And so basically I got everything set up, and every night, once like my family was going to bed, I would turn on Spazam to then do this affiliate marketing. It was basically an IM spammer. So turn it on probably 9 p.m. And then I would wake up, the next morning, and I would check how much money I'd made. And it was basically like $100 a day that I was making through this affiliate program. It only lasted for a couple of weeks, but I ended up making, I remember it was like $1,555. It was just a weird number. So I still remember it to this day. They said they were shutting down my account because you weren't supposed to be marketing it this way. I was only 17 or something at the time anyway. So I don't think I was supposed to be signed up for their service, but they said they were shutting down my account. And so I like called them with this like fake deep voice, being kind of angry. And amazingly, they agreed to just pay me for the $1,500 that they owed me. So I got that. But that was actually the first time I made money online. And it just kind of like, it really started to click.
So before this, did you not have your own computer?
The computer that I had, the good one that I got in like 8th grade, that was at my mom and dad's house, my mom and stepdad's house. Sorry. They ended up moving to Minnesota, and I moved in with my dad and stepmom. So at my dad's house, we amazingly had one of those Mac clones, the like power computing. And so we had that. I had this really old laptop that I used. I didn't have one that I could just like set up, basically occupy the phone line all night, have this program running, all of that. Like having that extra computer that DeVry gave me really helped.
And then did you have your own AOL account, or how did you stay in line?
My family had an AOL account, so we all had our own usernames under that account. And then using Progs, at least for a while, I was just creating accounts constantly. So there wasn't really consistency there. The account that I still have today is the same family account that I had in 1995 or 1996, something like that.
And what would you spam with? I mean, was it like a fish or?
It was not a fish. And actually, I remember, this is bringing back memories. It wasn't against the TOS to be IM spamming at that time. They added that later. So I can't remember, I was probably using some sort of fake account, but they weren't being like deleted right away because of the spamming. People were reporting it, but it wasn't against the TOS, and it eventually was. But and especially because AOL, I remember they started monetizing a bit better. I think like on IM Windows there'd be ads. Like they started adding more ads and stuff like that. So I think they eventually realized they certainly didn't want people making money on their users without their permission. But at the time, from what I recall, it was not even against the TOS. It wasn't in there.
Got it. So I have a copy of Spazam. I can add it to the show notes. I know we we both kind of found it, and just looking at it, I see you can input your. Well, first of all, there's an add room feature. So can you tell me about how that works? There's some auto button. I'm not sure what that does. Maybe tell us a little bit about the program.
It's been, it's been a little over 25 years since I've used it, or about 25 years. But so I'll try to remember the best I can. What it would do is load the program and click start or something like that. And it would take you into a private chat room, just a room, just you. And then what it would do is it would load up that chat window where you could see all the different public chat rooms. And it would just go from public chat room to public chat room. It would say, who's in here? And it would get you all the screen names of the people that were in each chat room. So it would be like, it'd be like lobby 100, who's in here, get all the screen names, and then send the message to every one of those screen names, and then go to the next room. I remember this number kind of stands out in my head. One night it sent like 28,000 instant messages. So just going from chat room to chat room. I was sending stuff like, click here to see my pic or something like that. And, which actually worked back then. I suppose it probably works to some extent today too. But back then it was not expected that you were going to be clicking like an affiliate link.
Nice. Looking at the program, you can have a custom subject. Well, how come there's a from address too in here? So this is just I am spamming.
Yes. Well, what I was doing was I am spamming. I can't remember if there was an email aspect of it as well, but yeah, it was just I am spamming. But I was definitely including a link, and I believe it was hyperlinked. I believe it was like, if you were to write something like click here, I believe you could hyperlink that text. I can't remember for sure, but I don't think I was just sending like a visible URL.
Yeah. I think 3.0. Yeah, that's the one where like all the punting and stuff really came out because of the HTML whatnot. I believe. Okay, so you got an older computer, a modem, got Spazam, made $1,555 after you called them and demanded it. And what happened after that?
I just continued to go deeper with experimentation. I launched a couple of websites. One was like a kind of like an online men's magazine. Another was I was creating banner ads for people. It was a site called Anaban. And I was doing this stuff for free initially. It was just, looking back, it was kind of silly, but it was actually really good because it got me just using the different tools out there, coding HTML, understanding that. I got a merchant account when I was 18, which now is so easy thanks to Stripe. But back then it was like an actual process to get a merchant account, a couple months. I eventually started charging people to create banners, like banner ads for them. And these were not pretty. And I think I was probably using CorelDRAW. So they were very simple. And I was eventually charging people to submit their websites to different search engines back when there were a lot of search engines. So I was just using some software, they would pay to submit, and I would submit it to whatever it was, 500 different search engines. Don't know how many of those were actually useful, but probably not many. But so I was dabbling. I was making some money online, dealing with customer support, dealing with HTML, graphic design, all sorts of stuff. So it was a period of a lot of learning for me. And then when I started college in the fall of 1999, I launched a website. I relaunched a website called oppapers.com, which was a controversial website for the previous owner. So someone started it in 1997, and it stood for Other People's Papers. And it was basically just a website where you could share, upload term papers, essays, course notes, any sort of study materials. And I was looking for something to launch when I started college. And of course, I was a student. I wasn't a great student. And I thought, I'm going to research that space and see what's going on there. And I checked to see if oppapers.com was there still, and it wasn't. So I checked the Whois database to see if the domain was available, and it was. So I immediately registered the domain name, and we relaunched. My friend and I put a splash page on the site saying, let us know we're going to relaunch the site. Let us know what you want your username and password to be, and we will, and also send a document that you want on the site, and we will, let you know when we relaunch. Checked the email account 2 days later. There were like 15 emails from people with documents wanting to join. And so that moment, that kind of just became my life. I think all of those, the experimenting on AOL plus the experimenting I did with, launching this magazine and creating these banners, like all of these little things added up to creating this. I had more experience at that point, even though I was still quite young.
Yeah, so it sounds like without AOL, if you were just going straight from like BBS to the internet, you would have had a totally different experience then, right?
I think the community on AOL, I can't say I was like an active member of the community, but I was there, and I was interacting with people. I was learning. Like so many other people, it gave me a reason to learn to code, and gave me another reason to stay online and spend God knows how many hours on AOL. I think about it, and I'm sure you're this way too, but Malcolm Gladwell says, it takes 10,000 hours to become like an expert at something. I mean, thanks to those days and really all the way up to today, it's been tens of thousands of hours just messing around online and learning. And so much of that is rooted in those AOL days.
How did you get the idea to start OP Papers? Like, when did you decide, like, hey, I want to make a paper site? Like, talk a little bit more about that, like the inception of the idea.
Sure. So my younger brother showed me these term paper websites in high school. There were a few out there. One called like schoolsucks.com. There was oppapers.com, and there were others too. And so I was familiar with that space in general, but I wasn't like an active user or anything. And then eventually I remember seeing oppapers.com for sale on eBay. And, I can't remember what he wanted for it, but I didn't have the money for it. So I didn't buy it, and no one else bought it either. And so it just so happened, like I was just thinking about, okay, what can I do? And I was like, all right, I'm going to start a site in this space. And I just happened to know of that site and checked to see if it was available, and then it wasn't available. And but so there was probably like a year-long progression to getting to that point. And trust me, I was very surprised that it was available. And as you know, today, any domain name with any value, any links back to it, it never would have been available today. Because like when we bought it, we didn't have to start at zero. It was an expired domain, but it had some links to it. It had some reputation. So like even just getting like, if it was 50 visitors a day, whatever it was at the time, even getting that, just that slight bit of momentum was so helpful to us.
And you mentioned the previous owner wasn't happy. Are you able to talk about that?
What I remember, what I know is he started the site in 1997, and he ended up getting in trouble for it at his school. And I remember reading some articles about it, but he actually changed the name of the site. It was still called OP Papers, but he changed it to Official Provisions for Papers rather than Other People's Papers. He was trying to like take it in a slightly different direction. From what I understand, the site had been quite a burden for him. And so he just let it go. We actually did end up connecting.
Nice.
And, we were just instant messaging. And he told me some of his philosophies. I remember he didn't think that making users create an account was a good thing. He like really wanted it to be completely anonymous or something like that. And he had gone on to start some other things. I'm not sure whatever happened with him. It's been almost 25 years since I've spoken to him.
Got it. Okay. And so it sounds like he got in trouble for the site. Did the people that ran the school you were at, did they find out about the website or?
They did. They did. So, and through my own, it was my own fault. And I guess this goes back to my kind of roots of doing a little bit of spamming. In probably 1998, during that period of experimentation, I got a program called Extractor Marketing, and it was like a Windows-based email sending program. It would do all sorts of things. It would you could enter in a search term, and it would then search the web for, it would basically load up a search engine and pull email addresses from the different websites that showed up in that search result. It would also just let you send bulk email. I was going to a school called North Central College at the time, which is in Naperville. We got the whole school's email list. I can't remember how, but it was readily available. So we were thinking about sending an email to the whole school about the site. And I remember I was like, all right, I'm going to go take a shower. And I left the room and came back, and all the email had been sent to the entire school, as well as to some other schools. We were collecting email addresses. I remember getting I think it was George Washington University, some other schools. We had basically gotten a lot of their email addresses. And it didn't really cause an issue at first. The Whois database was public at that time. There was no domains by proxy or private registrations or anything like that. So the one smart thing I did was I just put my initials, I think it was, in the domain name as the registrant, and then I had a mailboxes, etc., like a UPS store mailbox down the street. So I used that for the address. Yeah, we were kind of invisible, but maybe a month later, I got a call and had to go to the dean's office, and they had figured out that the email was sent from my room, not only to our school, but other schools had complained that we had sent this bulk email. In sort of typical school, what I would say foolish school fashion, what they decided to do was shut off the Ethernet in my room. And I say foolish because, clearly I was a person doing things online. It may have been, some would say misguided at the time, but these are the type of people that you really want to kind of nurture. Okay, this person's doing something. This is marketing. This is building, all of that. But no, they shut off my Ethernet. At that time, that was a big deal because this was 1999. Wi-Fi was not a thing. I'm sure there were options out there, but it was not like it is today. And no one in the dorms had Wi-Fi. Anyway, thankfully, a friend, a guy named Andy Watkin, who lived right across the hall, actually let me and my friend Chris move desks into his dorm room. And we just started we worked out of his dorm room for the rest of the school year, which was so kind of him because, we were going in there. He's not even awake in the morning yet. He would just leave his door unlocked. Or we'd be there past when he was going to bed. If he hadn't done that, our lives would have been a lot harder. But it was cool because that also became the room where everybody hung out. So it was a lot of fun. So we made the best of a bad situation.
So was it turned off for the rest of that year, or did you try to petition to get it turned back on or anything?
I should have petitioned to get it turned back on, but from what I recall, it was the rest of the year, October, November through May of the following year. We were working out of Andy's room.
So how did they figure out that you had sent the emails from that room?
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly, but there was a guy who worked in he was a student, but he worked in kind of the IT department. A guy named Carey, who ended up becoming a friend. But he kind of did the investigation to try to, figure out who had sent these emails. I don't remember how he did it, but they eventually figured out it was me. I think I have the same name. My first name is Henry. I have the same name as my dad. So they were like going down this rabbit hole of like, was it this lawyer who did it or something? Like they had gone down some different rabbit holes, but then they finally just figured out that it was one of their own students in a dorm.
Yeah, I'm guessing if you look at the mail headers, you can see like what server it was sent from. Then they probably looked at the mail logs on the server and saw your IP address, had connected to the server to send the emails. So were you must have been using their SMTP servers then? I'm guessing. Is that
I believe so. I mean, maybe we were using the the hosting company's SMTP servers. I can't remember at this point.
Oh, yeah, that could be it. Yeah. Okay. So if you're doing that, then maybe it was NetFlow. Maybe Carrie knows.
Yeah, Carrie probably knows. I haven't seen him for a while, but he's actually in Illinois, as far as I know.
So the OP papers, that wasn't there some song like around that time, other people's property song or whatever?
Yes, there was it was a Naughty by Nature song. Yeah, oh yeah, it was down. Are you down with OPP?
Yeah.
I believe that's where he got the name. I'm not positive, but actually, something I wanted to mention to you too is the AOL Prog's inspiration reached oppapers.com in another way. You remember how when you loaded various programs, especially AOL, it had that music from Nothing But a G Thing at the beginning. So I actually put this audio clip from a Too Short song at the beginning. And what's crazy is I was using like Microsoft Front Page or something to do the HTML code, but it would allow you to put there was code at the time, at least, where you could insert like a WAV file into HTML and it would play when the website loaded. It was kind of hilarious. But so we had that play at the beginning from almost day one. That was there. And that was definitely AOL inspired.
Okay, so you launched the website, and then were people just uploading like papers that they made? Is that, could you access papers without? Do you have to like share one to get one, or like how'd that work?
Yeah. So initially we used, I don't think these things even exist anymore, but I bought a Java applet where it would allow you to create user accounts. And basically it would load like in the center of the web page, and had some sort of backend or file, I can't remember, where you could add new user accounts. So we were manually adding these user accounts to this Java applet. And all that would happen is if it was a valid account, the applet would forward the user to like an internal web page that in theory anyone could access anyway. As far as I recall, we were still getting papers and content via email. People were creating accounts. We were creating those via emails that they sent to us. It was very manual, so it started taking a lot of time. And people were of course sending us like Word documents and PDFs and files. So we're like copying the content from Word, pasting it into an HTML editor, and then uploading or adding the document to the site. So it was super manual. It took a lot of time. And I didn't know how to code for the web at the time. I knew HTML. I could do that kind of stuff. But it inspired me to learn PHP. So at North Central College, we had a long winter break. It started at Thanksgiving and went all the way through New Year's. And my family was going on a little trip to New Orleans around Thanksgiving. So I just read this book. It was called Core PHP 3. I basically read the book cover to cover, just reading through functions and just getting an understanding of like how it worked. And by the end of that winter break, the site was automated. So users could create accounts, users could upload documents. And of course, that was a big breakthrough. It just saved us tons of time, and we started getting a lot more content, a lot more users. But yeah, that manual work was the inspiration to really learn how to code.
Once you started getting more users and stuff, did you start thinking about monetizing it? Or I guess like, was the intention always to monetize it, or is it just like, hey, I'll create the site for fun, or like, was there a plan behind it, or?
There definitely wasn't a major plan. I did want to make money somehow. And so we caught the very tail end of the dot-com boom. So there were like ad networks we could sign up for that were paying like decent CPMs. So we started like making a little bit of money on ads, just banner ads. Then once the dot-com crash happened, I mean, it was crazy. It went from making money to like basically nothing, like it just was not happening. Thankfully, there was an old business in the space that they essentially wrote custom papers for people, another sort of controversial business. But they were private, they were an advertiser on a lot of different sites in the space. So they approached us, and eventually I think, I remember they were paying us like $900 a month to advertise on the site, which for college students was awesome and enough money to reinvest some in the site and pay our hosting bill and all that good stuff. So that was huge for us. And that was the year 2000. I remember it was the summer of 2000 where we started working with them.
Nice. Did anybody upload any malicious documents to your site, or?
As far as I know, nothing like hacker style malicious. In terms of, people would occasionally update or upload copyrighted content that we would have to remove. But other than that, we didn't really have any major issues with content.
So when you say you had to remove it, was there like an official takedown request?
I want to say back then it was less formal, but we had that. I ran this company from 1999 through 2017. So later, yes, there were formal takedown requests. We had a legit process for it. Yes.
Where were you serving it initially? Like where were the web servers located?
So initially, it was just like a shared hosting provider. I actually remember the name. It was called ICOM. It was icom.com. I don't know where they were. I don't know how I found them, but that's where we were originally hosting it. Then in our space, there were a lot of people like kids like us running websites like this. We were like instant messaging each other all the time. We became friends. And one of them hosted with a hosting company started by a couple of kids too. It was called Digital Smiths. And so we ended up hosting with them as well. And actually, I ended up bringing on one of the co-founders of Digital Smiths, my co-founder, Todd. He joined us like 8 years later at my company. But so eventually we were hosting with them. It was on like a dedicated server. Honestly, had plenty of technical issues, but it was good enough to keep going.
Nice. So was it just papers or was there other stuff?
Papers, course notes were the majority of our content. You talked about monetization too, and I can go deeper in there if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Our monetization journey was really, the banner ads to the private advertiser to eventually someone in our space, someone entered the space and realized that you could charge a subscription for this type of service, which makes total sense today. But at the time, that was a foreign concept. So this person entered the space, started charging subscriptions to, he was buying content from me. He bought some content from other people. I didn't think much of it at the time, but we shouldn't have been selling our content. And then he was advertising on other sites in the space and paying something like 20 cents a click, which again, at that time was a good amount of money. Eventually, some of the other sites in the space and us later started switching to a subscription model as well. Our journey with that was going from the private advertiser to then I actually started a dating website in college as well. And I had experienced a chargeback issue, enough chargebacks to where the merchant account that I got when I was 18 was shut down. So I was like very afraid of chargebacks. I launched the site and we just charged for a 1-month membership, non-recurring. And even with that, it really opened up this idea of like, wow, we can be making real money without being reliant on advertisers. The other thing that happened at that time was Google AdWords. And we could buy keywords like essay and essays and very, very generic keywords for 5 cents a click, which was just awesome. So we were getting a lot of traffic from that. Anyway, eventually we finally switched to a full-on subscription model in like the summer of 2005. The prior year, we had made like $60,000 on a combination of ads and this one-off membership. Once we switched to the subscription model, everything changed. I want to say that year we brought in something like 300,000. The next year was more, and I remember very, very well that we crossed the million in revenue mark in 2007. And when I say $1 million in revenue, this was like 90% net margins. So, we had basically no expenses. There was hosting. We did the coding ourselves, so there was no development fees or anything like that. We got all of our content for free from students. And by that time, we weren't doing much on Google AdWords. The pricing had changed. We probably could have made it work, but it had gotten saturated and harder to deal with. And so it was really that subscription model that allowed us to start taking things to another level. And even in 2008, we tripled the revenue. And actually, that's when Todd, my other co-founder, joined us. So we were kind of flying high for sure. It was the three of us here working at a house that I bought in LA, and just living together, working together nonstop. It was really fun. So I still miss those days sometimes.
Did you have any issues with schools? They're upset, or maybe trying to scrape the site to see if any of their students, like, if they're suspicious about a paper or anything?
Schools didn't love us. We weren't doing anything illegal or anything like that. There's no real way to like just shut us down or anything. And we were never involved in any lawsuits for the entire life of the company. Nothing ever happened. And I'm glad you asked this, because around 2009, 2010, we tried to sell the company, and we had talked to a number of buyers who asked us a lot of tough questions. And there were like the two biggest takeaways were that companies don't buy businesses run by three guys working out of a house, no matter how profitable they are. That's definitely changed now. But back in 2009, 2010, no way, that was too risky. The other thing we learned was no legitimate company wants to buy a company called oppapers.com. I read this book called Brand Hijack. It was basically about like how Red Bull did their marketing, how Pabst Blue Ribbon, became a cult brand. They talked about Napster, like a number of things. And I reached out to the author about consulting for us to kind of like help us take things to the next level. He didn't get back to me, but there was another guy in the book named John Grant who had done some research in the book and participated as well. And he did get back to me. So we hired him as a consultant. And it was the best money we ever spent, because for whatever reason, he was the person that just kind of pushed us over the edge to finally rebrand and what we would call like go legit. And that shortly thereafter, we ended up renaming the company to Study Mode. We were able to get studymode.com. It's a much better domain name, school friendly, student friendly. It's funny that we were kind of in this underground space for a while. It was all our fault, and everyone else in the space, like with domains like schoolsucks.com, like these are not positive things that will ever cross over to being a mainstream education site. So we happened to buy this name, oppapers.com. It served its purpose for, like 12, 13 years. And then we rebranded as Study Mode. And really everything changed from there. We started hiring people locally, like really talented people. And honestly, I don't think they would have loved the idea of working at oppapers.com, but Study Mode was, it was a brand that they could get behind. we also started getting a lot of calls from investors, which was great. It kind of it proved out that this was the right move. We eventually got a call from someone at Spectrum Equity, which is a great firm, and they had invested in SurveyMonkey, Ancestry.com, like a lot of big companies. It was our interactions with them that really helped us take things to yet another level. And that was, around the same time that we started, there was a site started called turnitin.com, a company called iParadigms, where students, rather than like emailing in the essay they wrote, they go to turnitin.com and upload it, and then Turnitin checks it for plagiarism and other stuff. They had always been kind of on the other side of what we were doing. Schools loved them. Schools were paying them for their service, whereas schools didn't love us. Spectrum suggested that we try to do a partnership with Turnitin, which a few years prior would have just seemed so unlikely, but it made a lot of sense. And so what we ended up doing was doing a deal with them where actually no money was exchanged. And we were able to give them all of our content, rather than them scraping our websites and stuff like that. Like we gave it all to them. And we thankfully got to say that we were doing that. And so that kind of legitimized us even further. And it was great because it cost us no money.
Wait, but then what's the business model? I thought the whole thing was like you can get free term papers, and now you're giving it to Turnitin, which the schools are checking. So it's like you went against the core purpose of the site originally.
Yeah, it could be seen that way. But the thing is, like, even if we wanted to be kind of the rebellious site in education technology, the fact is, Turnitin, they definitely had all of our content one way or another. I mean, they were scraping the whole web. So it wasn't just us. We weren't giving them anything they didn't have. We did make it easier. Would I have thought about doing that in 2000 or 2005 or even 2008? Maybe not. But at this point, it was the right thing to do if we wanted to really take this company to the next level.
Was the core product still just accessing people's papers, or did it turn into something else then?
Yeah, so it evolved. We had papers, course notes, we had AP notes for high school students, we had book notes like Cliff's Notes. Eventually, we added like a question and answer forum. Like if someone wanted help with a particular problem, they could ask. So there were a number of different features. We added flashcards as well. We Quizlet was getting really popular. So we ended up buying a couple of the older sites in the space, and we merged them into this brand called cram.com. So yeah, we were experimenting with a lot of different products. Moving away from papers was not a bad thing in terms of sort of further legitimizing this business. And also, we never wrote custom essays or anything like that for people, but we did have partners who did that. And so, at this point, as we're trying to really go legit, we abandoned that business as well. So it was really, we were really on this mission to be a mainstream education technology company while still offering students what they really wanted, what they really needed help with. At this point in time, if you were ever turning in a paper from our site or anywhere, Wikipedia, anywhere on the internet, you're going to get caught. It was that simple. Not because of a Turnitin deal or anything. That's just the reality.
Okay, cool. So you guys pivoted, and it sounds like you got a lot of sweet stuff on it. So then what happened? Did you eventually exit or what?
Sure. Yeah. We eventually sold the company. And it was a journey. We rebranded in 2012. We were building a great team here in LA. We tried to sell a total of 3 times. We tried to take late stage venture capital 1 time. Only one of those processes worked out. But throughout every one of those processes, we learned a lot. Like, for instance, Spectrum never ended up investing in us, but through the process, we learned so much. And things like that Turnitin deal came from that process. Yeah, we ended up running it for a few years. I ended up hiring a CEO to kind of replace myself in 2015. And he ran the business, from a CEO perspective for the next two years, 2.5 years. And then we ended up selling it to Barnes & Noble Education, which is a public company that's a spinoff of the Barnes & Noble bookstore. Yeah, a lot happened in that time. More and more transitions, more acquisitions throughout the life of the company. We bought over 10 businesses, and we were still buying businesses like 2 months before we were acquired. We bought monografias.com, which was a popular business in our space in the Spanish speaking world. We bought this domain name, bartleby.com, and we ended up totally revamping that, adding a lot of new content. And that ended up being one of the core products after we sold. And then from there, Barnes & Noble Education operated it for about, 6 years, I want to say. And the thing is, ChatGPT really harmed this space. I mean, it really took education technology to another level. Or businesses like Chegg, which is also in our space, but it's a public company. It was valued at billions of dollars just a couple of years ago, and now it's worth like less than 200 million. Because so much of the stuff that we were doing and they were doing can be done by ChatGPT now. It'll be interesting to see, where the education space goes from here. I mean, I think it's going to be more and more AI focused.
Yeah, that's really weird. I'm pretty far removed from like what happens with education, but what I do know is teachers do get mad if you use ChatGPT.
Totally. And part of what, as far as I know, part of what Turnitin does now is AI content detection as well as plagiarism detection. So they're kind of evolving into that world as well. AI, I hope students are able to use it in a smart way, and I really hope teachers let them use it in a smart way, because it's here to stay, obviously, and it's only going to get better and better. So how can students use it intelligently? Should papers really be an assignment anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely did not enjoy writing papers when I had to write them. So how big was the company when you finally sold it?
When we sold it, it was about 40 or so people here in LA and about 40 people in India as well. So that was the size. We were hitting high teens in revenue. I can't remember where we were exactly, but 17, 18 million in revenue. And I know that for a while it grew under Barnes & Noble Education. It seemed to be a very mutually beneficial exit, which really isn't always the case. Many times one party does a lot better than the other, but I think it was beneficial to everyone, at least until ChatGPT came out. But I hope Barnes & Noble Education was able to do okay. They ended up selling the company to another company in the space called Course Hero.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with Course Hero. So is there anything else you want to cover today?
No, I think that's it. I think we've covered some good ground.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your journey from BBS to AOL to web developer to creating many companies and then having a large exit. So that's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this podcast to begin with. I love it, and AOL is forever ingrained in the way I think. So really appreciate you doing this.
Hack the planet! Hack the planet!
Welcome to cyberspace.